it never got any less exciting to see the Telstra brand show up during games or even sitting in stadium and seeing it on the screen, because it was like I had a hand in that, and that's really cool. Yeah, it's kind of an accident, to be honest. I was looking for something new, something different. This role popped up.
You're listening to Becoming MatchFit, the podcast helping athletes and high performers build confidence, clarity, and opportunity on and off the field. I'm your host, Nick Greentree. From Telstra to Deakin University and Gray-Nicolls, today's guest has shaped some of the biggest partnerships in Australian sport across AFL, NRL, netball, and the brands behind the game itself. So Lauren Plumridge, welcome to Becoming MatchFit.
Hi, Nick. Thanks for having me.
So, Lauren, for everyone listening, can you just talk through a little bit about your career? Because when I look at what you've done already from Telstra across AFL, NRL, Deakin University, and now Gray-Nicolls, you've touched almost every part of the sports ecosystem. So super interesting. How did this all start for you?
Yeah, it's kind of an accident, to be honest. I'd been at Telstra for over 10 years already at the time. And I was looking for something new, something different. This role popped up, which was offering a mix to work with our sport and music partners. So I sort of just went for it. You know, sport was definitely something that I was interested in doing, but it was actually the music side that pulled me in a little bit more. And then going in for the interview with the amazing Janelle Sharples gave me a bit more of an insight into what the role was about. The interview went really well, but then I was asked, okay, which area would you want to work in? And knowing more about the role and working with like AFL and NRL and everything, I was like, actually the sport. And then I got the role. Was, thrown into the deep end quite quickly. I'd sort of done previous work in AFL with my now husband, but back then he was just a guy who I was sort of seeing, and he actually used to be the mascot for Richmond Tigers. So I used to be the girl that walked him around to make sure he didn't fall over anything or like be trampled by kids. So I'd already had a bit of an introduction into working or, getting to know the business side of sport and AFL specifically. And it was kind of funny because the music side of this role just sort of never eventuated.
How interesting. Like you followed your gut in that moment and that here you are. And look, Bells does tell me incredible things about Janelle. We're yet to meet, but I'm looking forward to the day we do. She sounds like an incredible person to work with.
Yeah, she's an absolute powerhouse. So yeah, get her on the podcast.
Yes, we're aiming to do that. Love that.
Great.
So in that role, you said that you were sort of thrown in the deep end. What skills actually helped you early on there to find your feet?
Really was forced to sit in and listen in on meetings and conversations. And I think that's what sort of helped me learn really quickly. Yeah, just putting myself out there, meeting all the people who knew that I'd be working and need to form a somewhat sort of close relationship with, sitting in on sessions just to get a feel and an idea of how Telstra is being integrated into the NRL and AFL ecosystems, and from a brand perspective, how do we want to show up? Yeah, so I think it was just definitely putting myself out there, letting other people know who I am as well, how I'm contributing, and then just meeting people face to face too, if I had the opportunity, going out for coffee, just catching up, talking through how we'll help each other and, how everything sort of fits within the Telstra world.
Incredible. And I do agree with you wholeheartedly, sort of when you are new to an industry or just new to a role, having your listening ears on first and foremost, I think is always number one strategy, just to absorb. I've seen too many people trip over because they think they have to open their mouths first. And I always take the approach of like, absorb and really lean on those around you who have the experience and can teach as well. So it sounds like you definitely took that on.
I had fantastic colleagues in that space as well who definitely became mentors to me. So I think, surrounding you with people who you want to learn from and who can teach you a whole lot.
And wow, being at Telstra to do that as well, like naming rights partner for NRL and just everywhere in sports sponsorship. So I think you landed very well into a role like that.
So I was very, very lucky.
Amazing. Was there a moment that clicked and you said, this is where I want to be. This is where I want to take my career forward?
It was probably after working on the huge campaigns that we did across both AFL and NRL, and
Okay.
seeing the brand show up and being able to have a hand in how your brand is portrayed, it definitely turned into an absolute nerd watching every single game of like AFL over the weekends and then also NRL as well. Like it never got any less exciting to see the Telstra brand show up during games or even sitting in stadium and seeing it on the screens, because it was like I had a hand in that, and that's really cool. Yeah, just getting that like warm and fuzzy feeling every single time I did, and it was like I really love this. But then it was also the integration pieces as well, and the different campaigns to support a community sport, like with NRL, it was the junior grants, and AFL, that was the Telstra Footy Country campaign and grants as well. And it was just nice to be part of a company that wanted to give back. And I know that it was definitely a strategy of Telstra's that we don't want to be the big bad corporate. You know, we want people to see us that we are here for the community, and we're more than just a big telco. They're just small little pieces to show that we're more than that. And there are people behind the brand, and we care.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess that leads me to my next question is around, have you seen partnerships evolve over your time in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely see just even through TVCs that are run now, working in the netball space with Suncorp as an example, their TVC for the Suncorp Super Netball is so heartfelt. And you're watching it from this little girl starting just her netball journey and as a little kid, and then her growing up and going through and being so excited to make like the rep team, and then she's on a bus going to these major tournaments. So you see like her journey, and that's a big thing for Suncorp because they've been basically the naming rights partner for SSN for the past 10 years, I think, ever since the SSN competition started. And they can really pull on the heartstrings because they would have been around when kids were growing up, and now they're at this big levels. But I think a lot more brands are doing it as well. Like NAB do a really great job of showing up and really putting like the mini legends
Yes.
campaign in the heart of what they do throughout the footy season. So yeah, integration is definitely becoming one. But on the other hand though, there's a category for absolutely everything now. And you can be like the gym category, and they're just pulling out sort of everything. I'd love to say that partnerships should be meaningful and make sense, but at the same time they also want to make money. So if they have a brand who's willing to pay them a lot of money to be a logo slap or have a little bit of signage or anything like that, they're probably going to take it. So yeah, it's an interesting one. You do see brands, the bigger brands, probably the more brands that have had longevity in their partnerships and sponsorships, moving more into that integrated community piece as well. But I think for the newer brands coming in, they have to start somewhere. Not as much as the big brands, and it is more of a logo slap. So yeah, you kind of get two ends of the scale. I was in the US recently as part of like a sports forum, and I don't remember what sport it was for, but it was a big bank who was giving a talk, and the bank itself sponsors the sport, but then one of the teams brought on a hometown bank as their sponsor. So this is why, like, obviously brands need to make sure that their contracts are absolutely soundproof and don't leave any room for there to be competitors or have like having that little piece of exclusivity being able to be challenged, because other brands do come in, and even the sports themselves you might have the category of bank, but then they've created a new one as a hometown bank. It's an interesting space, and if they want to find loopholes to bring on more
Mm.
brands and make more money, then it's kind of what they're doing.
Yeah, that is interesting because, yeah, we know, the general list of categories. And, yeah, within finance, you can break it down into banking and into insurance
Mm,
and wealth, etc. So, yeah, how narrow do you go to carve
mm,
out that own category is interesting. And to your point, yes, everybody wants to make money. I think one other thing which I find interesting, and yes, it's easier for the bigger brands to have more maturity when it comes to sponsorship and marketing. And I think it's maybe educating or leveling up some of the smaller brands to say, great, maybe start with that logo, but here's where
mm,
you can evolve to. And it won't always be at the same level because there's just not the capacity or the
Yeah.
capability to do that for everybody, but maybe improving the storytelling or maybe improving how you integrate your socials, or so it's always just trying to see how do you extract the best value that you can with the partnership opportunity that you have, because I think that's what Bells and I see a lot of is, yep, great sponsorships with clubs or with leagues, but are they extracting the best value? And I think there's still a lot of low hanging fruit, which is what we're keen to help them get a hold of. But I think,
Yep.
looking at always at best in class, like what Telstra does, or any of those other big partners, is a good place to be aspirational, and you can work back and see, well, what can we actually achieve with our company?
Yeah, exactly. And I think, in our world of social media and stuff now as well, that storytelling is much easier to do now. Like you have to be telling the right stories and bringing in or engaging with the right audiences. But through, it's brands don't need to put out a in TVC anymore to win the hearts and minds of fans. I think like a huge portion of the population is on social media now. But sports and clubs and codes are doing a good job in engaging, especially the younger audiences, through social media and bringing on brands that do connect a little bit more to that audience, and that's sort of winning them over in that way rather than your sort of traditional media types.
Absolutely. Huge opportunities still we see available in that space. Some people are doing it
Yeah,
great and others are still finding their feet and have great opportunities ahead of them.
yeah,
So
definitely.
where you're at now at Gray-Nicolls, you're in the netball space,
Yeah.
predominantly women, but as you were telling me before we started recording, men's competitions as well, which is super exciting. I'm keen to understand from your perspective, sort of what do you see in the women's sports space?
Yeah, yeah. So the netball space is very different to working with other codes such as AFL and NRL. And they've obviously got the women's competitions on their sides as well, which is hugely popular. And I loved working in that space with both of them. AFLW was still quite up and coming. It was when I sort of started there, it was only 4 years old at that time. So there was still quite a bit of work to do. It is very different, but it's also really exciting and fun to be in mostly women's sport. Yes, there is a men's competition. I'm not disregarding them. As I said, they've got a huge tournament next weekend over Easter, and which they're playing in. So the numbers that they have to be able to have that tournament, are huge, and it's really great for them to be able to put on this huge competition it is Men's and Mixed Netball Association. So yeah, that's really great for them. Yeah, I think women's sport is so hugely underrated. I was at the netball yesterday, and the game was amazing. It was so exciting. The stadium was packed. What I find about women's sport, it's so much more family friendly than purely men's sport. You don't have the issues of people getting angry or drinking too much beer and creating problems. It's just such a more fun and inclusive space, especially at the netball. But it's as equally as exciting. And literally yesterday's game was like an absolute nail biter, like out of your seat, don't know how it's going to finish type of things. People just need to realize that and actually put themselves out there and go to a game. Even FLW and NRLW games too, they're so exciting to watch, and we take our kids to these games and they have a great time. And yeah, it is just such a nice atmosphere to be in, and you're obviously out there supporting women in their sport, and this is what they do for a job. And everyone talks about the Matildas effect. And especially, and I think people are still trying to find that formula on what the Matildas did from going from where they were, which was, I think numbers came out, especially because of the Asian Women's Cup final last week, I think it was,
Yeah.
that when they played their final, when the Asian Women's Cup was on previously, they played in front of like 5,000 people or something like that. And then this year it was a completely sold out stadium at 70,000. I think it was at a core stadium
So,
or something.
yeah,
It was like
yeah,
a
something huge.
huge difference. And it was just like, the turn in a few years and where the Matildas came from to where they are now. I think other sports are trying to replicate that. But yeah, I think people need to actually go out and realize how great women's sport is and get behind it and support it, because that's the only way that it's going to get better and bigger, is that if you buy the tickets, go to the stadiums, watch, buy their merch. Like people just need to get amongst it because it's super fun and it's really great.
Definitely. I think the family friendly one is definitely what attracts me to going to into those environments. As a female fan, I want to feel safe. And I think if you're at one of those games, that's a big part of it. How do you feel bringing your kids along? Because you want to have fun and you want to be there for the enjoyment and the support, but not at risk of, or it feels a little bit dodgy or they're having too many drinks. Like, you know what I mean? So, yeah,
Yeah.
I think netball is definitely one of those ones that fits that for families for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Love it. Okay. So, in the amazing work that you've done, you must have a few favorite campaigns. Is there anything that really stands out to you that you've loved working on?
Yeah, my favorite was probably Big Plugs for Small Business that we ran through both AFL and NRL with Telstra. I came in the second year that they ran it, so the rest of the team had a bit of an idea on what to expect because it was a huge, huge campaign. Everything had a really quick turnaround time because there was a few different elements. It was like a competition that was running for small businesses to get their brand on the sports signage for one game of a round. And then every game that round had a different business. So um, across NRL, I think it's 8 games that they have. AFL have 9 games per round. So it was essentially a different business on each of those. Once the winner was chosen, make sure they had at least had a logo we could work with, and then sending it on to agencies to push them to get it done within 5 days to pull together a huge amount of artwork for us to then be able to supply it to the clubs or the codes. And that needs to be like 7 days before. So everything needed to be done super, super quick. And there was a huge turnaround, hugely fast turnaround time on it. So, yeah, all of us worked around the clock, I think, for like a month straight to get this all through. But that was a hugely rewarding campaign to work on. As much as the work, it was a lot. Yes, it was hard. There were definitely like late night conversations and very early mornings during that time. But to see these small businesses who would never get the opportunity or be able to afford, getting signage at a major game, which I think a few of them would have been broadcast, or they were broadcast on TV as well. To give small businesses that opportunity was a hugely rewarding experience, and being a part of that with them, it was just very cool to work on and to be able to deliver something like that to these people, which they couldn't be more grateful or thankful for. So it was very,
Oh,
very cool.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. And look, I think working on those kind of projects or campaigns at the time, you're like, what? Like, is this ever going to end? This feels like hell.
Yeah.
But in reflection, you do learn a lot. You're like, okay, my project management levels just went up a notch,
Yeah.
and like I can turn things around, and you start to get into that manic rhythm, which you don't want to sustain forever, but it does put another skill in your tool belt to be able to draw out when needed, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And it was kind of like that was the pinnacle of everything, because it was like, if something else got hard later down the track, I'm working on like grand final. It was like, guys, we've done big plugs for small business. We can do anything. Like if we pull that off, we can do anything. So that's probably the one that sticks most to me. Working on grand finals across both codes was also hugely rewarding, especially in the NRL space, because being naming rights, there was so many assets to create. And I'd Esther Chand, who is still there looking after NRL, she would come to me and be like, "Oh, and now they've the stage for the entertainment. We need signage for that, and we need the tunnels." Like all this stuff just kept coming up, but it was a sea of Telstra. You couldn't go anywhere in the stadium or on TV or anything without seeing Telstra somewhere. And that, as a brand, that's what you want. Like you want to be absolutely splashed everywhere, especially with such a hugely popular and widespread broadcast event like grand finals. You want to be seen, and Telstra was definitely seen.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's been lots of very cool stuff that I have had the opportunity to work on in campaigns. But yeah, the team itself as well, we had a good time. Once you get to the point of actually executing and delivering, it's always a huge relief to be over the line and see it in real life. Like it's different working on things behind the scenes, but actually seeing it be released is, extremely rewarding.
Absolutely. What is it, do you think, that actually makes a campaign like that successful? Do you think it's the planning? Do you think it's the teamwork? Do you think it's the budget? Like, is there a secret magic factor, or is it just a multitude of things?
I think it's a multitude of things, but I think the planning is probably the biggest one. Like, what's your ultimate desired outcome? Like, what do you want from this? And being able to envision that and then kind of work backwards. So, yeah, using big plugs as an example, like we knew what we needed to get to and what we had to do. And then it's, yeah, working back and like, okay, we're going to need 9 different versions of something just with that brand. But within those 9 different versions, we've got 10 different types of signage. So, there was probably across everything like 300 pieces of individual signage and assets that we had to create. So the planning and everything is super important when you break it down to really understand what you're doing. And then obviously your timeline needs to be developed from there. Yeah, I think the envision and be aware of your ultimate outcome and then working everything up to that.
Absolutely.
And obviously the team everyone needs to be supportive. Everyone needs to put in the same amount of work. And yeah, the team, like I love them so much working with the Telstra team. I'm in Melbourne, the rest of the team was actually in Sydney for a long time. So there would be many, many hours per day on Teams calls. Because when I did start, it was during COVID. So we were home all the time. But yeah, it was good to feel like I still had a team around me who was hugely supportive and we were all supportive of each other, even though we weren't physically in the same place.
Yeah. Teamwork can't be underestimated. And I think
Yeah.
that goes, from my experience anyway, not just your immediate team within the organization that you're at, but if you're using agency partners or, even the clubs, like whoever it is that your stakeholders are, that working relationship and being on the same page, you can't underestimate that.
Yeah, 100%.
Is there something that you are really excited to still tick off your bucket list or that you want to be a part of?
Yeah, NFL Australia, that's something I would love to be part of. It's just recently been announced that that game is in September this year. Even though it's a kind of once off, I think it's a huge opportunity for to potentially come back. NFL in Australia is hugely popular, and we know that through they're selling out sort of like pubs around to watch the Super Bowl. NFL have like an official Super Bowl party in Melbourne every year as well, and they've actually got a team of people here on the ground. And it was really, as I said, I was in the US lately, and they had no idea of how big it was over here and how much people get amongst it. So yeah, I think there's huge opportunity for NFL to be so much more in Australia, and it would be very cool to be part of that.
Amazing. Well, we do know the GM, Charlotte Offit, so we'll hook you
Yeah.
up. And so your current role, back to the netball, it's the World Cup of netball coming up shortly. Can you talk to us a bit about that? And how does your current role support events like that?
Yeah, so Netball World Cup next year in Sydney. Gilbert is the official ball of the Netball World Cup 2027. It's exciting for us because since it's in Australia, we're the ones on the ground and sort of get to execute on the partnerships. We're still very much in the planning stages for the World Cup at the moment. They did a big brand launch last year in Sydney, which was absolutely stunning in front of the Sydney Harbour Bridge. And yeah, that's where they launched the Brace Yourself brand positioning. And that was the two-year celebration to the day of the launch of the Netball World Cup. Hopefully it's a hugely popular event for not only for netball to grow the game, but also for Australia as a whole. Bringing in internationals to come in and watch is great for Australia and Australian sport. So yeah, it's really exciting. There's lots of work going into it.
Sounds amazing. Can't wait to come along and watch some games. But let's talk about community players. How do you support the clubs with the products that you sell and what you're doing on the ground?
Yeah, so through our sort of state organisations and state partnerships, we have a lot of help from them in working with their associations as well at a community level. So we do partner with community associations and community clubs to provide them with quality equipment. So we do what we can to make our balls and equipment accessible to everybody. We want all clubs to be using Gilbert netballs, from a quality perspective, but we do also understand we know we're not the cheapest on the market and we aren't going to pretend that we aren't. But that comes down to our quality of our product, and we stand by our quality as well. So we do have club pricing that we can offer. We do work with them quite closely to make sure they get the product and the goods that they need. But we're not just balls. We are apparel and equipment as well. And we do have a whole team who can work with clubs and associations on designing dresses, uniforms, t-shirts. Like, we can be a one-stop shop essentially for netball clubs and organizations, and provide them with everything that they will need to set up a club and to keep it running too. So yeah, we just want to make sure that we're putting that out there, that people just think of us as balls, but we're so much more than that. We can provide them with whatever they need to be successful and to have everything they need for the club.
Amazing. Because you are, yeah, a quality brand, and that name is known for quality.
Yeah.
But I think, yeah, to your point, the flexibility on being that one-stop shop and working with clubs really does sound very supportive, I think. So, yeah,
Yeah.
exploring your options would be amazing. Also, we were talking a little bit about different types of netballs. Now, again, this is exciting and new news to me. You know, my mind goes, quality should last longer perhaps, but I
Mhm.
think what we were talking about was it's more, what is the ball suited to, what level, is it elite or is it community, and then you kind of make the fit and the product selection. Can you talk through that a little bit more for us?
Yeah, so we have a whole range of different balls which are sort of suitable in different circumstances. But our top tier sort of elite standard ball, which is used by Netball Australia, Australian Diamonds, that's the same competition, everything like that. Those balls would generally only be used for a match or two, and only be used on sort of indoor courts. And the way when I first started with Gilbert Netball and Gray-Nicolls, the way it was explained to me was, think of it like an F1 tire. And those tires, they'll have one shot around the track and then be replaced. So that's the same with our netballs. The quality and the grip and everything on them is so great, but it wears very quickly as well. So they don't have a lot of longevity, but they're suitable for what they're needed for in that particular game. Like, you'll see with netball games, they generally play with the same ball the entire time. They don't sort of swap them out. It's not like AFL or NRL where as soon as it goes out, they'll have a new one be thrown straight in to keep the game going. And netball generally use the same ball for the entire game. So yeah, and they might use it again if they, deem the quality still great, but yeah, other times they'll sort of bring in a new ball for the next game. But you would never take one of those balls and use it on an outdoor court. It'd probably last 5 minutes and the grip would all be gone. So yeah, that's another thing that we work very closely with our clubs on, to understand the type of ground that they're playing on. Like, some clubs still play on asphalt, not the sort of surfaces which a lot of outdoor netball courts are now. So that's a big piece of my job, is to work closely with these clubs and associations, understand what their courts are like, what ball and grip and quality is going to be best for them to get the longevity out of it as well, and making sure that they're getting the right ball suitable for what their needs are. A lot of clubs purchase balls once a year and they'll kind of replace them through that way. So we want to make sure that we're giving them the right ones to make sure they can get through that year, get through the entire sort of season that they need them for, even 2 seasons if it's within that year. And then they'll come back to us early the sort of following the year after and repurchase them all again, getting ready for the next season. So yeah, and that's part of the whole relationship, and that's what partnerships is all about, is building those relationships that are trusting, and they trust that I'm giving them the right advice and information and know what I'm talking about for them to be able to purchase from us and continue to come back.
Fantastic. And that personalized service as well, like you're working with them. It's not just like everyone gets the same and that's it at the end of the day. If they've got ambitions to take their players further, then looking at the equipment could be one angle that's going to help them get there.
Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic. So where do you see partnerships heading over the next few years?
More brands want to be involved in sport. And I guess that's a good reflection on sport, is that they see the value in having those partnerships. And obviously brands come in because they want the exposure, they want the brand recognition. So I think from sport as a whole, it's being seen as a real valuable asset to brands to showcase their organization and be put up on sort of a bigger stage. I think sports codes and organizations, we're just going to see more and more announcements of different types of partnerships, but there doesn't seem to be like a limit on how many partners they can have and what type of partners they can have, because you're seeing a whole bunch of different ones come out the woodwork, and, wanting to partner with big sports. I think social media will be used more and more as a tool to support those sort of lower level sponsorships and partnerships. And from the bigger side, them getting more involved in community, just showing that they're to support the sport as a whole from like grassroots up to the elite level.
Absolutely. My prediction on the widening of those categories, like you say, and more brands coming to the table is hopefully seeing more creativity
Yeah.
in partnerships and sponsorships, because I think sometimes there can be, let's run it again and let's run it again. And the
Yeah.
creativity is kind of like forgotten about. And I think
Mm.
that's where there's so much richness and so much potential.
Yeah, and I think, especially going back to like NAB mini legends as well. Yes, it's the same thing that they kind of pull out every year, but they keep it fresh.
Yes.
It's kind of exciting to when they do come out with a new one every single year to be like, oh, who are they going to be this time? And I think that's probably harder to do, is how to keep something that you have sort of created and it's well known. How do you keep it fresh? How do you stop it from just being like this dull thing that gets rolled out every year just because it's easy? So yeah, that's probably harder than thinking of something new. But yeah, I totally agree with you. How do you have more creativity in this space and keep it fun and interesting?
Yeah. Full disclosure, I did work at NAB
Oh,
and worked with the guys that pulled all those campaigns together. And I have to tell you, I was there when AFLW launched.
yeah, right.
And I remember Andrew Knott, our head of marketing at the time. I mean, we had a massive marketing team. I think it was the biggest in the Southern Hemisphere. But, his response to why NAB was leaning in to support that sponsorship. Obviously, they already had the AFL and it made complete sense. But the actual reasoning and the internal belief was beautiful to be a part of. And then obviously, when those mini legends every year, it was
Mm,
exciting internally, like let alone to see like the anticipation of it coming out for everybody else. But big shout out to SOC and all the guys there that still pump out that amazing work, because that's the beauty of the blended creativity, leveraging what works and keeping it fresh. They know how to
yeah,
hit those marks every time. And not everyone can do that, because sometimes they do the repeat, but it misses the mark. And I think
yeah,
that's where NAB doesn't get it right.
yeah, 100%. And as a marketer at heart, working in the sports space and especially with signage and everything, I notice everything and I appreciate like all the effort and the work that goes into it. And, you really notice when something's done really well. And yeah, I'll never not watch a game of footy again without like looking at all of the LED and stuff and be like, oh, they're a bit different this year. I wonder why they did that. I'm like, oh, that's not good. Like, yeah, it's definitely ruined my perspective on watching football. Don't watch the game anymore. I watch everything else that's going on around
Yeah.
and be like, "Oh, that's a new sign. That wasn't there last
You
time."
should try watching a game with bells. I'm sure you have. There is no watching the game. It's like, they've got that wrong. That looks
Yeah.
good. They've done that different. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wrong
and I think,
disclaimer.
like, yeah, it's all come from, yeah, when I was actually doing the signage, like, you'd look for anything of Telstra and that to go wrong, and I think that's what you need to have those great relationships too, because you can ring them at 7:30 at night and
Yeah.
be like, "You're running the wrong LED," and they're like, "Alright, shit, yeah, I'll jump on and
Yeah.
change it straight away." So, like, you've gotta be able to have that open communication and no one's blaming anybody. It's just like, "Quick, change it. I don't think anyone's noticed." Like, mistakes get made. We're all human.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's definitely what not that I look for things to go wrong now, but I like looking at other brands and what they're doing and how they're showing up. Yeah. I'll do it forever.
Last question, and this is a question that I ask all of our guests. What does becoming MatchFit mean to you?
Like I was probably later in my career when I really figured out what I wanted to do. Just actually like graduated from my studies in sport. And so I've continued to work on myself to get myself into a position where I'm going to continue to grow and thrive. Yeah, there's so much to the world of sport, and I don't think that people really understand that, especially from a partnerships perspective. I think people want to work in sport when they leave school because it's like, oh, it'll be really fun. I get to do some fun things. But I think the understanding is that you can work in sport and literally do anything. You can work in HR, you can be a lawyer, you can, work in partnerships, marketing, digital. Like there's so much that I don't think people really understand. And I think once they realize that it's actually a whole world of opportunity. So just keep working towards keep finding your network, keep just reaching out and talking to people. And, for myself, I'll continue to do that, and maybe I'll end up working with NFL, who knows? Like, it's such a big world out there, in terms of sport, like Australian sport, but it's an even bigger world out there, like internationally. So yeah, I'll just keep pushing, keep hustling, keep talking to the right people, and
Fantastic. Keep backing yourself. Yeah.
yeah, back yourself. That's it.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Lauren. It's been such a joy
Thanks,
to
Nick.
chat with you. And yeah, you've brought so much insight. I really do appreciate it.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks for having me on. It's been really fun.
Well, I look forward to seeing you at the Netball World Cup. I'll keep an eye out for you in the grandstands.
Be there.
Lovely. All right. Thanks for that. And
Thank you.
take
See
care.
ya.
See you. Bye. Thanks so much for listening to Becoming MatchFit. If today's conversation inspired you, feel free to share it with a teammate or someone you love as well. You can access free tools, resources, and our community in MatchFit 360 Academy. The link is in the show notes. Until next time, unlock your value, change your game, and become MatchFit.